I'm, like I say at the beginning of every video, just adjusting the camera because with this recording service and having the camera set up in this fashion, it wants to change the orientation of my camera. I don't know if the screen lock would affect that. I'll have to try that next time. But you know, that's one for another day. So right now I have Stonehenge Aqua watercolor paper, quarter sheet, which is 11 by 15, which I just consider 11 by 14 due to the edges and the clips, and it would go underneath a mat that would have an opening that's like, I don't know, 10 3/4 and probably 13 3/4, something along those lines, which would then go in a frame that is 16 by 20. And these are inches that I'm giving these measurements in. And right off the bat, here's a tip that I did not think about when I first started, is to paint in common sizes with common available mats and common available frames. If you wind up giving work away, selling work, donating work, whatever you do with your extra work, that is it just makes things so much easier. You know, some people are very interested in the aspect of cutting their own mats. My dad had given me a mat cutter that he had used, and it's fantastic, and I'm truly appreciative of it. However, I paint so much, and I have other responsibilities, jobs, whatnot, that I didn't have time to cut a mat for every single one of them. So I use that mat cutter for special paintings, and when I need something that's not commercially available, and I buy my mats in bulk. I have these little things that will help make frames. It is like a 4 right angles with a fabric around it for the oil paintings. But once again, that's time consuming, and if a special frame needs to be made, I'll try my hand at it. But nowadays, with basic frames, like I use Hobby Lobby frames for my watercolors, oils I haven't really pursued too many frame aspects. But yeah, think about those things that learn about framing, learn about the different types of glasses that would go over it and whatnot, and why you want a mat, so you have air circulation over it, and it allows expanding and contracting of the paper and whatnot. So learn about those things and the reasons why. But I think I gave you a lot of information just now on that, so hopefully that was helpful. And try to focus a lot of time on painting and painting questions and researching painting. Now, here's a picture that I had taken on my drive to work the other day. You might see my fingerprints on this cover, which I should have wiped off beforehand, but I did not, because you can see, and you know this, that you have oils on your hands. I have a long beard. I don't know if y'all ever seen a picture of me in the other videos, but I have oil on my beards. It gets on my fingers. It could get on your watercolor paper and affect the surface and the way it takes things in. So that is what I'm going to look at today. It's mainly a sunrise scene, and my main focus is to concentrate on the 2 different tonal values: the tonal value of the sky and tonal value of the land. So there's a stark contrast between the two. I want a light tonal value for the sky, and I'm starting off with raw sienna, and I'm gonna gradiate up into a blue, and I'm gonna try to keep this nice, light, and airy. and then we'll talk about what the plan is for the ground. So with painting, there's a lot of the times, and I think a lot of our more prolific painters will do this, and when they advertise either a product that they're selling, if it's a tutorial or a book, they have asked a million questions and they have explored a million times. And oftentimes they say, they're sharing decades of knowledge with you, which I think is completely true. That when we're watercolor painting or painting in general, you should always be asking questions and seeing what issues are taking place. Like here in the picture, there is some reddish pink on the horizon. So, my question right there is, do I want my light red to come into it? Light red's kind of an opaque red. Or would I want my alizarin crimson? How would that affect it? So right there, I had a problem and I tried answering it. Then that was my thought to it. Eventually down the line, as you paint for years and years and years, and as hopefully I'll paint for years and years and years, that question will be, it won't even be so much of a question, like you have that in your bag of tricks and right off the bat that that's your go-to, that's your style. But me, I've been watercoloring for a year and a half or so, and I'm just playing back and forth while I'm talking. There's no need to have spent that much time doing that. But ask yourself questions. Let every painting session be some sort of question answer response, or a question and then exploration of how you would do it. Like here, I'm gradiating up into a darker blue. I recently read that, the sky's gradation will often follow the colors of the rainbow. Roy, red, orange, yellow, then a greenish blue, then a blue, then a violet. So that is, a potential solution that I'm looking towards as I'm gradiating up. How much hue do I want? Meaning, how bright of a blue or concentrated of a blue do I want? How does that give the feel of a morning sunrise? And how do I want to get that purple? Okay, with my palette, like I said earlier, my reds are alizarin and light red. So I'll try just the alizarin with this and see the purple that takes place. So experiment, ask questions, but don't stress out over just do it. Just experiment with it. Just put it in and see what happens. A lot of people will say, I'm sitting there looking at a blank canvas, blank piece of paper. I don't know where to start. Just start. And I'm going to mix some Payne's gray to get a little bit darker. What I mean by that is just start doing this. Just put in a wet and wet. As you've seen in other videos, or if you've done this technique before, everything softly diffuses. Just utilize this time to get into the flow of things. Okay? So, picture-wise, I believe it's much darker. However, I think I want to go on the lighter side. So, another question. With this lightness, do I achieve a morning feel? Do I achieve a evening feel. How is it going to look in contrast to the dark and tonal values of the ground? How's it going to look with my I'm mixing up kind of a brownish purplish. I was thinking the other day, I think that's my favorite color, brown. But anyway, how is this brightness going to work with the contrast and the darkness of the earth? Because the earth in a sunrise scene is not getting very much light. There is no overhead source producing a whole bunch of light with it. One thing I was thinking about was, as an educator, somebody had said something that teachers make hundreds of thousands of decisions a day. How do I approach this topic? How do I see if little Johnny understands it? Who do I call on to solve this problem? Did I wait long enough before asking the question? Are the kids getting it? Do I move on? Do I give another example? Can I go to the bathroom? Making a decision right there to answer. You're constantly making a whole bunch of decisions in life, and realize that that's what's taking place during painting. A lot of different decisions. Anyway, now let's move on to our dark ground. So I'm just going to mix up a dark, and I'm going to move it towards the blue side, and then add reddish yellow, move them away forward. Okay. Add some raw sienna in there. Sorry, burnt sienna. Now I think for this is all entirely too light. So, since I haven't dried anything off, you want to keep in mind that if you do wet and wet, and somebody had asked this on a Facebook post about their layers, how they weren't staying and they're picking up the previous layers, or there's something affecting it. When you go wet and wet, as you do another layer, do a more pigmented mixture with less water in it. So right now I'm just grabbing paint. I want it more on the blue side. Bring more on the red side. All right, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try to get variation in this flat plane. There is a road in the picture, but I really just don't want the road in it. So to make the ground somewhat interesting, I'm going to need different variations, slight variations in tone and color. someone who's a master with the Hake brush would probably be able to do this in one swipe, or watercolor in general. So what I'm keeping in mind now is that I'm going to have darker blues further away. Then we're going to put in a distant tree line. It's not the most exciting of compositions, but like I said, I try to ask a lot of questions or have a problem and want to come up with solutions with it. I think that's been my painting philosophy and style for a while now. And from the beginning, it was, for this one, was the two varying tonal values, the morning sky, then the darkness of the land who's not receiving much light. So that was the first question. So that was the experiment. The second one is now the aerial perspective, that further away it's going to take on a bluish, and then, it's because it's an extreme distance in the picture, and as it comes forward we're going to have reds and yellows take place. I believe first you hit the reddish tone, and then I'm just going to use a variety of reds just to make it interesting. And the whole point of this is to help me get a recession rather than a flat looking wall. Then we can have the yellows. A hint of texture in the foreground. Payne's gray. Variety in this. There's clumps of grass. As these clumps of grass, if you do something like that, they recede into the plane. They get closer together and narrower. Okay. Now, I did my light sky, dark ground, not receiving much light on it. Now I would like to do my verticals. There's a little tree line in the back. So let me bring this over for a second. There's a far distance tree line taking place, and some buildings and whatnot. Now here is another question that I need to ask, and some people would have solutions for it right off the bat, very experienced painters, but I need to ask it and I need to come up with a solution for it. And the question is this: the tree line, whenever I put it in, is going to be dark. It's going to receive the least amount of light. However, if I put in straight darks back in here, like just if I try to go black, like just some dark mixture, would that push all that forward and make it look more flat? Or, or do I do a lighter value in there? So theoretically, verticals should be darker because they're receiving the least amount of light. But because of the depth, aerial perspective, there's more atmosphere between them. There is less showing through. So that's the question. Now, the other question is, do I want to dry off before I apply it or not? So that's a matter of the feeling. So let's not dry off. And I'm not drying off because I would like to get a diffusal since it's so far back. So maybe the feeling of that softening will help it recede as well. And one thing that I had read, and I reference Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting a lot, is that if you need to have a dark in that far background or a bright splash of color, for instance, maybe, and his examples rely a lot with patches of flowers, that if it's a bright yellow patch of flower in the background, you have to mimic it again in the foreground to help get that recession. Maybe have a perspective aspect of it. So what I'm thinking is that through artistic license, I'm going to put in a darkened tree here. Just a darkened low growth tree, and that will hopefully push the other ones back. So let us see. So I'm taking a chance here, and that's another thing. Just take chances, just explore. So let's see. Debating again, do I want to dry off? Or not? This is a little. Is it a copse of trees, like COPSE? So the paper is super wet. The hake is pretty wet. So far we haven't used the rigger or a card or anything. I'm having a feeling that it might not be necessary for us to utilize that. I want to break up the pattern that was accidentally starting to take place with that movement. Now, unfortunately, doing that does give, I believe this would give an imbalance in the composition. So what we can do is we can set a further tree back. You could put in the hint of a house or a church or a steeple in the tree line, point of interest right in here, and that'll hopefully help balance things. Just a few light foreground strokes. I'm gonna have to dry off and do that, I think. Birds in the sky might actually help that take place as well. You know, a whole bunch of questions. this got a little too rounded for us. Okay, I'm gonna do a dry off, so if you have headphones on, watch out. Okay, one way to check if it's cool to the touch, it's still wet. I'm gonna take a mixture, a lighter wash mixture, because it's gonna be in the background. And I will just put in a few building elements. So right here, no rhyme or reason really. We wouldn't really see it that well, but let's kind of create a little pattern of buildings. That one is a little too bright. It pops forward a little too much. Then I think I mentioned putting it to church, so we'll try that. Truthfully, I'm not really sure where we should put it right here. Let the sheeps blend into each other. I know I'm blocking the video with my hand, I apologize. So it's the idea of life back here. All we'd be able to see would be the silhouette. Some morning birds. Okay. Now, since I have the rigger out, let's add a little variety. You're not going to see too much detail. All right. You could always take the rigger, on the side for different textures. Just get variation within this. We're reaching the end stage. I'm going to do a dry off. Now, I hope you all enjoyed. When we dry off, we'll look at anything matte. Pretty simple composition, but I hope you are encouraged to try it out. All right, so while I put a mat over this for us to look at it, I will sum up the thoughts of today. The first thought is to always experiment, to realize that art is often a series of questions and answers, meaning how can I attain this, like what is my solution for this, to think about the values, the light sky, the dark ground. Another thing that I'm questioning now is maybe taking a value from the sky and doing a wash over it, since the ground would maybe accept that tone to it. Keep in mind aerial perspective. As things recede, they are going to get bluer. As they come forward, red and yellower. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of things. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to follow along. If you look below in the description section, you'll see a whole bunch of different links to different resources that I put up. Feel free to like, subscribe, and whatnot. I have a Patreon set up if you want to, follow along, and if you want to donate anything towards supplies and whatnot. But I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, feel free to follow along, and if you have any questions, ask. And if there's anything you'd like me to address in a video, please ask that as well. All right, bye.